everybody, welcome back to We Are Podcast Network. This is We Are Bagu, Season 1, Episode 20, Indie Game Developer Spotlight, Rizzo Island with David Croshaw. Duck sat down with indie game developer David Croshaw to talk about his awesome game Rizzo Island, a new Dreamcast title based upon his late uncle's music. And yes, this is Dr. E, because I'm actually not in this cast. Unfortunately, I was busy as fook. So, I told Duck I was going to do this damn intro. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give We Are Podcast Network a like. And don't forget to check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, /We Are Podcasts. All links can be found in the description below. And with that said, on to the podcast.
Ethan, what are you doing in my apartment?
Shit, fuck.
We are Bagu.
Hey everybody, welcome to We Are Bagu, a video game podcast. We talk Atari to Steam and everything in between. I am your host, Duck, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. David Croshaw. David, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing pretty well, sir. How are you doing today?
I am excellent. I really do appreciate you being on the podcast. Stay with me. This is another indie developer spotlight. I'm super excited to talk to you today because this is a very unique indie game in the sense that not only how it was inspired and it came about, which I'm really excited to talk to you about, but also the platforms it's available on. So, just want to get off the bat what we're talking about. It's called Rizzo Island. It is available on PC and Dreamcast. So is super cool. David, let's talk a little bit about yourself. You are here in the DFW area, correct?
Yeah, I'm up in Denton, just on the border of Denton, Corinth.
And you were born and raised in Texas, or did you move here?
No, I moved from California. I'm from Long Beach, California, basically LA area.
And when did you move? When you were younger or when you got older?
Older. It was about, I'd say, 2014 when we moved. I moved over from my mom's job. That's about it. Not really many interesting stuff.
So you're a young cat? You're in your 20s or so?
Yeah, 25.
25. Right on, man. Well, welcome to Texas. I'm an implant also, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So that plays into the game, definitely. So growing up in California, is Long Beach seaside then? Is that right?
Yeah, Long Beach is seaside.
Right on. So let's talk about the game briefly. You can go check out the game. You can download it. Please donate to David and Dream Eater Studios. When you download the game, you can get it for PC and Dreamcast. Burn that bad boy in Image Burn and throw it in your Dreamcast if it plays burnt games. Some don't, most do. You can do that research yourself. This is, like I said, the exciting part about the game is that it is a Dreamcast game. It is a new Dreamcast game that you are hoping to release the full game. And I keep saying the game. It is a demo. When are we expecting a release of the full game?
The full game is yet to be determined. Right now, we're focusing on an early access release on Steam by the end of the summer. The reason for this is that we want to get the Steam build out as soon as possible. But one of the problems we're overcoming is that since most of the technology we're using is very niche, and a lot of the programming itself is very niche with the engine we're using and stuff like that, some people go in and out of the project. So sometimes they're working, sometimes they have to do another project for someone else. Sometimes they're busy with other stuff and they can't work on it. It's one of the main problems with indie development, but hopefully we'll be able to release the full game by sometime next year.
Right on. Yeah. And like you said, there are certain things in development, but we got to talk about the story of this game and why you decided to develop for PC and ultimately Dreamcast and how that came about. So let's talk a little bit about growing up. Are you a video game nerd? Have you always been a nerd?
So it's an interesting story, really. For the longest time, my mom was part of that anti kind of video game crowd kind of thing, the moms against violent video games and stuff like that. It's a very product of the 90s stuff. So all my friends from kindergarten to fourth grade had all these cool systems and stuff. I just had books and TV. But around, I believe, 5th grade, I got some birthday money. My mom took me to Target to buy my first game console, which was a PlayStation 2. She let me get a Game Boy Advance SP before that, but a lot of people don't count those as real gaming consoles, or at least back then they didn't. So basically what happened was I bought Ratchet and Clank Going Commando. That was my first game. I loved that game.
Excellent
and I still play it to this day. And it launched from there. Actually, now that I'm remembering it, the first video game I ever saw in action, personally at a friend's house, was actually my friend Will, who had a Dreamcast and was playing Sonic Adventure. And I just loved it because all I heard was about Nintendo 64. And I thought it was running on Nintendo 64. I didn't even know he had a Dreamcast until later.
I was going to ask, why Dreamcast? But we'll definitely get there down the line.
Yeah.
So, first experience with video games, PS2 era, like you said. Did you play games at other friends' houses before that, or you said that's the very first interaction with a video game?
That friend's house, the Dreamcast house, was the very first time I actually saw a video game. And basically, because I was raised without most video games most of my life, I was in the camp where my friends would want me to come over and play a video game with them, and I'd be like, why can't we do something outside? Why can't we do like something together or something like that? But luckily, I got that PS2, and it all went uphill from there.
Well, so that's the holy grail, right, at that point.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just gaming, or right on.
My parents later really gave in to all the gaming stuff that I ended up getting into, and I still have fond memories of leaving my PS2 on overnight because I couldn't afford a memory card yet, and I didn't want to lose all my game data.
At the same time, it sounds like you got an education through books. You were a heavy reader. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a heavy reader. I read a lot of, I know I wasn't supposed to be really reading this at this age, but I read a lot of Michael Crichton books, or Michael Crichton, like Jurassic Park and Timeline and stuff like that. Animorphs.
Oh, yeah, I remember Animorphs.
The Magic Treehouse, all those kind of stuff. And then I kind of moved on from manga to there, but that's a whole other story.
But it all plays into it. Let's talk about the other side, though. Your late uncle who has passed away, and I don't know if I brought that up in the beginning, but this game is inspired by the music that he wrote. Is that correct?
All the music in the game, and he is the main character. All the music has been written by him, made by him and his friends, and I was able to rip it from CDs and put it on the game disc.
Right on. So Tom Rizzo was your uncle's name, and is that on your mother's side then?
No, it was on my father's side.
Father's side? So
he's, kind of. So he's like my step-uncle. Mm-hmm. So he married my aunt, my dad's sister.
Were you two close then?
I would say we were relatively close. I mean, when we got together at family gatherings, we would always talk about music and all sorts of stuff like that, and the state of the record industry, fun stuff like that.
And are you a musician also?
I like to think of myself as one.
What do you play?
I badly play the keyboard synthesizer. I try to make 80s new wave music, but it ends up turning out something like from Weird Al or something.
That works, dude. I was just watching the documentary on Weird Al the other day. He's still relevant, so keep killing it with that. With this music, though, was your uncle a successful musician, or he was just a struggling artist, or what was the situation there?
So he was, and I mean this in the best way possible, he was one of those beach bum, bohemian, hippie type of guys. He didn't really have a set job. He kind of worked from place to place doing odd jobs wherever he could. In the end, he owned a painting business, but my aunt did most of the stuff. But he didn't really have a professional musician job. The most professional thing he got was a gig as a regular at a synagogue. Playing music, and that's actually where we had his funeral because they wanted to honor him that way.
Oh, that's cool. So he was a pretty laid-back guy, I take it, pretty chill.
Oh, yeah, very bohemian, very hippie-ish, kind of go with the flow.
And he must have had a major influence on you for you to want to spend all this time and put this effort into the game to honor him.
Yeah, he was very influential. And at the time, I didn't really have any projects going on. I just came off of a movie project, a 16-millimeter film project I was doing with my dad. So I decided, well, he really inspired me and he really inspired my music. Maybe not the same genre. He was more of surfer kind of,
psychedelic,
I guess you could say cafe music.
Oh, yes. That's a good way of putting it. And the music's wonderful, by the way. Yeah, I really, really, really dig the music in the game and the mood, and it fits it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. He was the inspiration, and he is the main character in the game. He is Rizzo, the surfer guy, with the surfboard as a weapon, which is wonderful. And so the development of the game, how did that come along? The idea, where did that start, and then why Dreamcast?
So the game actually originally started before he actually passed away. I should say development and my experimenting started before that. Basically, for a long time, I wanted to be a game developer. For a long time, I wanted to develop games for the Dreamcast. But the state of the Dreamcast community at the time I started, or at least the homebrew community, wasn't as popular as it is nowadays. When I first started the Dream Pi, which is something that you can now get your console back online with on the Dreamcast and play online with other people, that was just starting out. And that's kind of what started the homebrew thing to come up again. But I found this port of the Quake engine, which was pretty much feature complete and had a lot of the stuff I was working on. And I figured since there was a lot of stuff already documented about the Quake engine, it'd be the easiest to get started without having to write everything basically from scratch. Right. And I can't code myself, so I had to get somebody else to do that for me. So I decided to start working on this like open world style GTA kind of game, you know, like any indie game starts developing and realize, oh crud, I can't actually do this. But I tell you, when I first put a map I made on the Dreamcast and saw it run terribly, but seeing it run on the Dreamcast, I recorded it on my iPhone, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually got this running. It's like, a miracle.
It's amazing. I was at Retropalooza last year, and you had a booth, and I saw Dreamcast. I said, what is this? And immediately you started explaining it, and when you said, this game is an homage, or I made this in honor of my late uncle, and it's a game based upon his music and how it inspired me, and I was sold. And just seeing it there and playing it for a minute, I was like, this is really cool. And the fact that it's a new Dreamcast game being created 20 years after, the launch of the system. And the Dreamcast was a homebrew masterpiece. Homebrew community kicked up big time. When I got a Dreamcast, first thing I did was burn an NES emulator through those games on there. And then we know the Dreamcast, eventually some of that hardware ended up becoming the Xbox, which was once again a wonderful homebrew system if you were able to do so. So I was just like, it makes perfect sense. And you're keeping Dreamcast development alive. When you look at those communities, you're in that. It talks about, Dream Eater Studio and Rizzo's Island and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to see. But with that said, looks like it's difficult. I watched one of your videos online where you were messing with the level design and stuff like that. How difficult is it to develop for the Dreamcast?
So first you have to understand that I don't really have any formal game dev training like a lot of indie developers. I don't have any like formal 3D modeling stuff. So level design is actually easy for me. The problem is that since the Dreamcast has a limited polygon count, I think at least homebrew developers can only get about 10,000 polygons from it. And so, you have to kind of design those levels around that kind of limitation. And then there's also little quirks of the Quake engine that kind of make it, if you do it this way, it runs better. But if you do it this way, it's going to slow it down a ton. One of the main things that happened was that the software port of Quake, which was called Macaque, written by a guy named ManKRip, he was only able to get his version running at 340 by 260. Which is if you view it on a 1080 monitor, is the size of a postage stamp.
That's crazy.
So basically what I had to do was get someone to develop the GL Quake engine for me, and I had this guy write this guy was already doing it. He made the Dream Pie as well. He rewrote OpenGL entirely in C and assembly, which is very hard to do because assembly is basically binary language almost. But the level design thing, like I said, it's hard to do because, you have to limit the amount. You have to make sure that levels aren't too big or else they start having graphical glitches and slow down so much. And the way the Quake engine, you make levels for it is actually very intuitive, but you have to learn a lot of kind of techniques to get the most you can out of the engine itself without having to use a 3D modeler.
And I think you did the job very well because I felt like the levels were so well designed. The first level just being the introductory, there's 6 levels altogether, I believe, in the demo I played. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, in the full demo, there's about 6 levels. I think at Retropalooza, we only had 2. But I think in the full demo, which you can burn online, there is 5 to 6 levels.
Right. And I played both the Dreamcast version and the PC version today.
Yeah.
It's not a long demo. You could probably play it an hour, but it is very how you play the game because it's a basic platformer for the most part. Collect-a-thon, you play as Rizzo, collect CDs, also different room keys to open the final door in the level. There are enemies within the game. There are slime that shoots projectiles you can hit back at them with. And like I said, you're using your skateboard to smack them back. There are pirates in there. There are enemies also. And the game is very, very mesmerizing in a way. And I think it's a combination of the platforming and the music. And the music ties in so well. It fits the game so well. So when you were looking to do the level design, were you listening to the music at the time, or you just knew that the surfer dynamic of the game was going to play in well? What was the process of doing that?
So for a while, I would listen to his music. This was even before I thought about making him into the game, or that happened a little while later after he passed away. So I just kept listening to the music, and I would be like, wow, this actually would make good game music. And I've always wanted to make kind of a 3D platformer. This was before Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, the remasters came out, so everybody was hopping on that bandwagon. I wanted to make my own 3D platformer in honor of Ratchet and Clank and Rayman 2, and the music just kind of fit perfectly with it, it kind of reminded me of, if you remember the Poketaru level on the first Ratchet and Clank, it kind of reminded me of that, and that kind of gave me the initial inspiration for kind of like this beach, tropical island kind of feel, and a lot of his music just fit with the levels.
Right.
And I mean, I designed the levels specifically so that they could fit with the music and stuff like that. And he had like, I think 3 CDs, which I ripped different songs off of so I could mix and match them. Almost the greatest hits, but more like what would fit with the game the best.
And every theme does fit the level so well. Like, that's what I'm saying. There's a way that the level plays, and each level is different and feels completely different. And there's different gameplay mechanics within the levels. And we'll get to those in a second. But like, it does. The music fits it so well. And you said that you were able to pull from 3 different things, and that's just CD that you burnt. You didn't change the quality of the audio tracks or anything?
No, I didn't touch it up because I didn't need to touch it up. When I ripped it, it was CD quality audio, so there's nothing really to quote unquote touch up unless I had the original masters. That's as good as I'm going to get without having the original masters. And even if I did have the original masters, it was recorded in the 90s, and who knows if the studio still even has that kind of stuff.
Wow, it's great music. Let's talk about the level design. Like I said, first level is kind of tutorial, show you how to play the game and how that works. Second level, it adds in more bosses and platforming. The third level is the one that got me. No, that level is really hard. That level is really hard. That is the swamp level, I believe, is the way I guess you would say it. Yeah, that really... and the lava at the end. But wow, that really, when the platforming kicked in, it became a bit of a challenge. But it was fine. The fourth level, I believe...
it was the big slime monster.
Yes, fuck that slime monster. That's the first time I'm going to curse. But David, for real. Okay, now playing this in the Dreamcast, okay?
Yeah.
And I could not beat the slime monster. I blame that on my TV because I was playing it on my floor model TV.
Did you use the triggers to strafe?
I did. You're in a lava pit, and there's rocks there, and I tried my best, but I could not beat that slime monster. I'm like, I'm switching over to PC to see what happens. But, I mean, it was fun. It was frustrating. I was calling him Blob King or something. I can't use the Slime King or whatever.
Yeah, Slime King.
But I was calling him the big fucking blob. I was getting so mad at him. And I literally was like, David, why? David, why?
Don't worry, we nerfed that fight a bit. Don't worry.
Oh, bro. But it was good at the same time. It was a lot of fun. I was happy to be frustrated by the game. But when I switched over to PC, I was able to control just a little bit better.
It's easier to hit the slime back when you have control of the mouse and camera.
Right. But at the same time, I found playing it on the Dreamcast just as satisfying. It took me a minute to get used to the controls on the PC, but once I did, I loved it too. But I suggest you got to play it on the Dreamcast. It's available for the Dreamcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the way to go. The fifth level would be the temple. Yeah, I was calling it the catacombs in my head, but yeah, definitely a temple. And then I guess I didn't get to the bonus level. What is the bonus level?
So the bonus level, it's kind of a thing. If you collected all the CDs in a level, basically you got to this room where you could play his music. That's basically a placeholder thing that we had. We're working on trying to find something that's a little bit better and a little more rewarding to do. Maybe like player skins or something after you complete some certain stuff, and you can like have a changing room or something. That's just an idea I'm throwing out. I don't know if it's actually going to make it in, but we're trying to find a way to have it more rewarding than just having like basically a karaoke jukebox or whatever like that. But basically, once you collect all the CDs in a level, after you completed the level, it would teleport you to, like, we called it Tom's media room, where he would be able to play the music tracks.
That's really cool. Hey everyone, it's just Duck jumping in here real quick to say thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you're enjoying it, please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast. And if you're enjoying the podcast today, please share with your friends. It's the only way we can grow this network. With that said, back to the podcast. Right now, the state of the demo, how much of the game is done? How much are you planning on continuing with after that? Would you say like it's half completed, or are you looking to do a bunch of levels, or what's the idea that we're looking at it?
I would say it's half complete. There was going to be a lot more planned, but, as budget kind of shrinks, and then you kind of have to get the reality of that. You can't have this game be in development forever. I just kind of said, I have to get the best possible product out of it without having to spend so much more money than I actually need to, because then, Dreamcast is really a niche kind of homebrew community, even though a lot of people still have it. So you still need to be able to turn a profit. but don't make that sound like I'm only out for the money or anything. It's just kind of like, it just needs to be practical.
Right, and it's also a calling card for you.
Yeah.
And that's what's wonderful is you've made something, obviously it runs on PC, and that version of the game works just as well, but also you have the ability to run it on Dreamcast, which is, like I said before to you, that's the bread and butter of this. That's the part where you're going like, this is very interesting, this is unique, this is new, and that's why the calling card hits. You can show that you can create a game, and then you can let them know, and then hopefully you can go get a job somewhere else, I'm hoping.
Just wait till we release the 3DFX Voodoo Glide version. I'm just kidding.
Wait, I was like, holy shit, what? Get it done.
We used to be able to get it run on a Voodoo 2, but one of our newer features broke the compatibility, so unless we find someone who can provide some glide assistance.
Yeah, let's get it in there. I mean, honestly, the other thing, too, when you said there's limitations, I didn't see any limitations playing the game. I thought it was wonderful. The way you had it set up, minimal loading times on the Dreamcast, and the levels are a perfect length for me to be like, okay, this one's done. Let's go on to the next one. Let's go on to the next one.
Besides the swamp level, I don't think it goes on a little bit. I don't think it goes on too long, and even that one is pretty much as short as it can be without having to feel too short.
Yeah, but it's a great level. I'm telling you, the level design of that, I really enjoyed it. The challenge of it was perfect.
Thanks.
How many hours do you think you've put into this altogether?
Oh, I don't know.
I know. Every time I ask, I'm just like, I had talked to 2 other developers, just like, no, I can't. No, bro, come on.
So between working at Target, relaxing from all this COVID stuff because I'm already overworked at Target, it's kind of just like, I started this probably about either a year or 2 ago. I put in a lot of hours, but when you have to rely on other people that live in other parts of the world and don't exactly have the same schedule as you aren't completely professional, so you can't like full-time hire them or anything like that. It's kind of all contract work. You just have to do what you got to do and put in what you got to put in until all the rest of it comes together, and then you can move on to something else.
I was going to ask, what do you think is next after Rizzo's Island? What do you have a project lined up?
Well, first I need to take a break. After that, there's multiple ideas floating around. Some ideas I've kicked around with a few of my friends is a mech simulation game, kind of like in the vein of Mech Warrior 2 and stuff like that.
Right on.
I still want to make Dreamcast games, of course, so I'm using one of my 2 friends' engine, either an engine called the Simulant Engine or the Integrity Engine, both different, but they're made by 2 of my friends in the Dreamcast community. You can only go so far with Quake when it doesn't allow for like huge expansive environments. That second level, when you get into that huge little lake area, you don't want to know how much we had to get it to optimize it to push that much stuff at once to get it that big. That used to slow down so much. And so when you have to work within the limitations of an engine and work within the limitations of an older console with limited memory and like limited processing power and all that kind of stuff, you kind of want to get the most optimized thing for that system instead of having to deal with the pitfalls of both an outdated engine and an outdated system.
Do you enjoy working on older hardware, or do you find you want to try something different other than the Quake engine? Do you think you want to try Unity or Game Maker or something like that eventually?
So we actually want to, we don't expect this to sell like over 1 million copies or anything, but say in the hypothetical situation that this game actually does really well, we get a good response from it. I don't know, maybe it somehow goes viral or something because of the Dreamcast thing or some other thing. But we want to make an Unreal port of the game because we found out there is a map converter from Quake Engine maps to Unreal Engine maps, and that it has minimal kind of stuff changing to where you have to kind of like input the textures and stuff like that. It's found this itch.io plugin for the Unreal Engine, and we're probably going to work on that port next if it does well, because, you don't want to spend too much on a game that's not going to go anywhere. Again, this is still a passion project, but, at the same time, I'm just a broke guy working at Target. You need to think realistically.
I agree with you 100%. I think having a realistic expectation of what can happen is wonderful, but at the same time, you're already shooting for the stars. You're developing a game on 20-year-old hardware, and that is the catch to this. That's what's so intriguing. When I'm at Retropalooza and I look over and I see a Dreamcast, I'm like, I don't know that game. And then you stood up immediately and you started telling me the story. I'm like, this dude knows what's up. Like, that's cool. And so it is, like I said, a calling card to get you out there, to let people know that
yeah.
you're developing, that you want to work on stuff, that you're willing to learn, and that you're willing to create something that's a passion project. And like I said, the story is so good. The story of, having the music, and wanting people to listen to it and play the game at the same time and experience, something new and unique. I think people need to get out there and play it, especially those who love Dreamcast were in that community. Like, I'm older than you. I remember when Dreamcast came out,
No, strapping young man like you.
Oh, yes, I know. But, it really changed. It was super exciting, and the Dreamcast fell to obscurity, within 2 to 3 years.
I know, it's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And then you get a guy come along 20 years later, boom, he's making this new game. And that is super exciting to see, especially for somebody who's a retro crazed person like myself.
Let me just clear up one little thing, though, just to get it on the record. I am not the first one to make a homebrew Dreamcast game. There's been plenty of those over the years. And there's a guy named Josh Pratt out there that's making a game called Arcade Racing Legends. One of my friends named Larabot in Canada is making a game called Summoning Signals. I just don't want to make it sound like I'm the only guy developing and I'm all special or anything.
No, that's good, because what you've just done is you're spotlighting that people are still working and loving retro and loving hardware and loving homebrew and putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the next great project. I've been thinking a lot about how I could pull off a decent yet cost-effective fantasy open-world role-playing game. Because, if Virtual Highlight can do it on the Saturn, so can I. Maybe not at a good frame rate, but
no.
It's still... I feel like I want to do a lot for the community that's kind of supported me, the Dreamcast community. And it's also, like you said, a calling card. It's kind of a way to separate yourself from the flood of early access and indie games you kind of see on Steam and itch.io. Right. All power to those people that do that stuff, because it's hard to make a game and everything.
It is.
But at the same time, you see just so much stuff that gets put out there that it's really hard to get through all the noise and have somebody take a look at just your game.
Right. There's just a glut of stuff coming out. And like you said, all respect, because it's difficult. That's what people don't realize. People put their hearts and souls into this work, and it's time-consuming. But when you have a passion, you follow it. And like you said, you have a great hook for it. I think that people are going to see it. How can people support you? I know you have a Patreon. When you download the game, you can donate at that time. Yes. But also your socials. Where all are you located?
We are on Twitter at Rizzo Island Game. We have our Dream Eater Games, the more professional Twitter account, which is at Dream Eater Games. Our website is dreameatergames.com. YouTube, yes, YouTube. Rizzo Island Game again, or the Rizzo Island channel. We have the Dream Eater Games channel.
We'll send some people over there, but also all the links will be in the description too, just so everyone knows.
We're mostly active on Twitter and Patreon at the moment.
When do you think the release will be? Like you said earlier, you're thinking next year?
Sometime next year, hopefully, like the beginning to the end of summer, sometime in the summer, hopefully. One of the people that's working with the game is working on another Quake engine project that is being put out right now, and that has a launch date of next year. So he's helping me in between, but he'll be more available next year when I can get him again.
With that said, I think we touched on almost everything, but is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I think the one thing I want to do, to give a disclaimer, because this has happened a lot in a few interviews, and I want to make this perfectly clear. I'm not just doing this for the money or using a tragedy to get money or whatever like that. That's a common criticism that's being used these days for work like this, that you should put it out for free or instead of doing commercially or donating all the proceeds to a foundation.
I apologize. It's so bizarre. Never once did it hit my head that you were using it as a tragedy to gain money or anything. I always just thought it's a passion project. You know what I mean? That's so weird that people would even accuse you of that. That's fucking bullshit, dude. People are trolls. That's so fucking... Ugh. Anyhow, sorry,
I know what you mean. The first time I heard about that kind of thing happening was there was this project called That Dragon Cancer or whatever that had that criticism thrown at it. And when I was at QuakeCon, actually, I had one interviewer ask me if I was kind of exploiting the tragedy or whatever, or trying to make money off of my uncle's image or name or whatever, everything. First, let me get this straight out of the way. My aunt is getting a bunch of the proceeds to this.
Right on.
So, because, I don't want to cheat her out of anything. And also, like I said, I'm an artistic person. This affected me in a great way. And I may make money on it. I'm probably not going to make money on it since it's a very niche product and it's a Dreamcast game and everything. So I just want to get out there that this is just a passion project. Yeah. If I make money off of it, that's great. but it doesn't mean anything to me.
And also, shame on these people who would come at you that way, dude. That's so fucked up.
Yeah.
And but it just goes back to internet trolling. Troll culture is used to doing stuff like that. That's a shame, man. I apologize that anyone would try to put you down in that way, because to me, it's the story of the passion. Like, I love it. I was in a small band for a long time, and if my nephew or niece found my music 10 years from now and they're like, oh, that's cool, and they decide to make something, dude, I'd be chilling wherever the afterlife is and being like, that's badass. And the Dreamcast is the shit. Like, come on.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's just, fuck these people. But
in fact, actually, one of the best things about the Dreamcast is that it supports CDDA audio or Redbook audio. So that means that, assuming your CD player supports it, your CD player will skip the first track, and if you put the CD in the CD player, it will play the music itself, so you can burn it, rip it, all sorts of stuff like that.
Is the full soundtrack on there? I was going to ask you. That was my last question.
The full soundtrack is not on the demo. It will be on the full game.
Right on.
So basically, we're going to use all the tracks that are going to be on the actual CD, because the game runs the tracks from the CD audio.
And will it be all of his music, or just the music that you've chosen for the game?
Just the music I've chosen for the game. Some of my Patreon rewards actually have rewards saying that on release of the game, they'll get like the full complete works of Tom Rizzo that we've found so far.
But if people want to hear the main theme, we're going to link that below also. They can check that on YouTube. I highly suggest checking that out. Dude, I'm super excited. And I'm super excited to play the final game. Are you going to do actual prints and hard copies, or just release it through Steam?
Yeah, we are going to do prints and hard copies. Of course, the Steam release is going to be first. We want to get as much as a bug-free version as we can out for the physical release, because, since the Dreamcast isn't exactly known for patching games, I mean, it's internet-enabled, but you can't really patch a game with it. You need to get the best possible quality out there so that you don't have to have people say, oh, well, I have to reburn a game now. We'll have physical copies out, and they will be premium quality.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. And whenever people can add that to their Dreamcast collection, they're going to be pumped. And that's when the promotion really starts, because you can send them bad boys out to them YouTubers. Oh, yeah. So how can people help other than donating? Play the game on Twitch, show it off? How do you want people right now to be able to help you out?
Like you said, play the game, show it off on Twitch, tweet about it, retweet it, Facebook share it, anything you can do to help out. One of the main things we're looking for currently is some people that can work actually on both engine code and Quake C game code. So if any of your listeners know anything about that, or knows someone that knows that kind of stuff, just message me on Twitter. My DMs are open. You can @ me, and I'll be happy to give them a look. All those ways are the best way you can support us.
Awesome. David, I appreciate you so much for talking to me. Everyone, keep an eye out for Rizzo's Island coming to you soon. David, I hate to do this to you, though. Hopefully you won't get mad. I have to finish with the tagline. This is the tagline for the podcast. I got to do this, and I got to tell you this. You ain't Billy Mitchell, bitch.
So no, I ain't Billy Mitchell.
Did you meet him at Retropalooza?
Oh, yeah, I met him at Retropalooza. I still have his hot sauce that is, it's opened, and it actually doesn't taste that bad.
No, it's bomb.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I will say, I like Billy Mitchell. I think he's a great guy. I think he plays the heel of the gaming world really well.
Bro.
He kind of goes into that kind of and promotes it. I think that some of the stuff that he does is controversial, but I think most of the time it's controversial for the sake of being controversial, so that he can just be the bad guy that everybody loves to hate.
And there it is. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have enjoyed it, please do not forget, share with your friends. That is how we grow the network. And if this is your first time listening, head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you're going to love the other podcasts here on the We Are Podcast Network. We have We Are Era, where we talk about movies, entertainment, whatever the fuck we want to talk about. That's me, that's Jake, that's Javi. We're breaking down pop culture, and we're having a blast. Don't forget Heroes Gyros, a Dungeons and Distraction side quest. Me and the boys were sitting down, we're playing some D&D, we're having so much fun. You can go ahead and start that from the beginning of the journey, Season 1, Episode 1. You're going to love it all the way through. And finally, I Hate Being Sober. Personal stories from epic people. I'm going to sit down with some of the most epic people I've ever met in this world, and we're going to talk about their life, we're going to talk about their trials and tribulations, and we're just going to talk about their journey this far. Head on over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /WeArePodcast. Also, head over to the Facebook group, We Are Era. We would love to see you in that group. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, share it with your friends. That's the only way we can grow this network. But with that said, I have to remind you, I can never let you forget this. You ain't Billy Mitchell, bitch. So stop trying. We'll see you next time.